But she couldn't cook? Chima spent most of her days tormenting others by starting frivolous quarrels and then challenging her victims to a wrestling match to settle the argument. If we don't do something about the sun's laziness, Chima continued, we will be forced to live in darkness. Grumbling and loud chatter filled the hut as the women talked among themselves and agreed that something had to be done soon about the sun's laziness. Do not worry, Muna said, while flapping her hands to settle the crowd. I promise to go see the elders tomorrow and lodge a complaint against the sun. Managing to pacify the others with her promise, Muna went on, after we finish talking about the sun, we will quarrel about our declining crops. The women nodded and murmured. And when we finish talking about the sun and the crops, Muna continued, we will quarrel about something threatening our very existence. A gasp escaped from somewhere in the crowd. Several women frowned. Others placed hands on their hips and tapped their feet. A few women twisted their mouths and rolled their eyes. Muna took a deep breath and lowered her voice. We shall decide what to do about Ezomo. 2. A problem. Behind the Palava hut was a wide mud road that led to the main village compound. The villagers had named this main compound Pass Through because it was built in the center of the town, and people had to pass through it to reach the rest of the village. The wide mud road, after passing through Pass Through, led to the river, where each day the men of Sessa gathered on canoes made from hollowed tree trunks and rowed to the other side to discuss important affairs. Once on the far river bank, they sat in rows under the palm trees and looked out over the village farm. The front row was occupied by men with bald heads and gray beards, wearing white robes, the elders. They were the great-grandchildren of the men and women who had discovered Sessa long ago, so they held the highest rank in the village. They sat on wooden stools, while the other men sat on the red earth. Seated behind the elders were hunters, fishers, and farmers holding spears, shovels, and whatever else they could bring to show their status. The load carriers, wood carvers, and basket makers sat in the third row with small pride in their eyes, since they didn't have to sit in the last row, which was reserved for men who, according to the elders, lacked the talent and skill to contribute fully to the village. On this day, Sao, the village's orator, was leading the meeting. He stood before the crowd and glanced at his palm. Written there in red dye was a single word, Ezomo. Men of Sessa, Sao shouted, this meeting is importanto. Ihe, the other men replied in unison. But before we talk, we must prepare our bellies, which if left hungry, will not support our throats when time comes to speak. Ihe, the other men shouted, at which point Toba stood and dashed to a canoe to perform one of the few duties he was permitted to do since he had stopped speaking. No one knew what had caused Toba to stop speaking. One morning, while standing in the doorway of his hut, he had attempted to greet his neighbors, but sound refused to leave his mouth. Some suspected witchcraft, some claimed the jealous spirit had stolen his voice, and some said his voice was merely resting. The villagers had burdened their mouths for weeks with speculation about Toba's predicament, so their tongues were content to watch in silence the day the elders ordered Toba and his family to leave Pass Through and go to No Road. No Road was the compound reserved for men and women with no talent or skill. The elders had named it No Road because it was on the outskirts of Sessa, and there was no road leading to it or from it. In No Road, there were no mud huts, only flimsy shacks made from twigs and palm leaves. If you can't contribute fully, you have no business in a real hut, the elders had said to Toba. Before Toba lost his voice, he was a prominent hunter